If I'm young and I want to be a photographer or want to be an entrepreneur, what would be like some lessons that you would give me?
Every 3 to 5 years, you got to adjust to the market itself. And you might even have to adjust your prices or the competition.
Yeah.
If this doesn't work, there is no alternative. So
Right.
it motivates you to make it work.
So you got to put in 110%
All the time.
making this work.
When Vikings would invade a land, they would burn their boats. So it's either conquer or die. Like
Right.
there's no aspect of retreating back. That's how I looked at it. I was like, I got to burn the boat because I kept being half in, half out.
Hey guys, my name is Matthew Wolfhardt, Black-Markt, and we're here in Las Vegas, Nevada, one of Las Vegas's most successful photographers and entrepreneur, Christian Purdie.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about like what got you started. We kind of already went into your burning the boat story, which I really, really love. And you're a Las Vegas native.
Yep.
Tell me how it came to be.
We had breakfast. I kind of told you that, but I'll kind of retell that a little bit. I was working. Let me start from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I went to military school in Salina, Kansas, and took a lot of photos. And back then, it was all film. And I used to love going through the prints and looking at my buddies and doing all that stuff. And when I graduated from there, I came back to Vegas. I was working construction because it was the only thing that paid $25 an hour when you're 18.
Yeah.
And then I was a bank teller. I believe it was, First Interstate Bank.
Okay.
And it was the bank next door to UNLV. Okay. So construction in the morning, bank teller in the afternoon, or college because I was going to UNLV and CSN.
Yeah.
It's the city college here, College of Southern Nevada.
Okay.
But I always had a camera with me everywhere I went. Just took photos all the time. And one of the female bank tellers there was modeling for a guy named Kelly Garney, who was the bass guitarist for Quiet Riot. And she said, she noticed that I always had a camera. She said, this guy's looking for some help. And so I went and talked to him, and he hired me to just, hold reflectors, process negatives in the dark room, proof sheets, make enlargements.
And back in those days, you actually had to go into the dark room.
Yeah.
And process the film.
Yeah, little canisters and mix the chemicals.
Wow.
I kind of liked it. It was when I was in college, I spent a lot of room. I built a dark room and I had a walk-in closet.
Yeah.
I just turned it into a dark room. It was awesome because you could meditate in the dark room and you just vanish, right? Because you in this red light for hours at a time. Yeah. So it was very helpful. Journal, like, hey, this is what I want to accomplish. This is what I want to do. So I actually enjoyed the dark room, but nowadays it would be kind of I couldn't make money doing it.
Right.
But Kelly, I saw what he was doing, and he was like, this is a long time ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
He was doing photo sessions for $150. And I was like, I could do what he's doing. And then from that moment forward, I just kind of geared all of my education towards photography. So I have like 3 associate's degree and a bachelor's that has like a triple major, but it's all geared around graphic technologies or photography,
right?
Industrial scientific, which is cool, like CSI style stuff. Like we caught a bullet was one of our exercises. Like you fire a gun and you have to figure out where it's going to land and take a photo of it.
That's cool.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. It's just, honestly, it's just like the Matrix. I was like, holy cow, you could see it folding the air.
Wow.
It's pretty trick. Yeah. But super fast speeds. But that was it. And then I got out of that. I stayed in Santa Barbara for a little while and then ended up moving to Pasadena. I was doing photo shoots. I was relatively successful there. But I was like, if I open an ad agency, I think I'll get to do more photo shoots because this is what I love.
Right.
But I had the ad agency, and it was really successful.
And you were full-time photography at this point.
Right? Yeah. I opened the ad agency, and what I realized is the ad agency is more spreadsheets and buys and, ROI. It was more of
Yeah.
an accounting process because you're
Yeah.
selling ad space and buying ad space or buying TV ads. So it was more just the business admin side or
Mhm.
selling side. And I really
Mhm.
didn't get to do hardly any photo shoots.
Right.
And then that's when my mom got sick and I
Mhm.
moved back to Vegas. And that's when I
Mhm.
decided to like burn the boats.
Mhm.
And this is it. Because this is what I love to do. This is how I can see myself literally doing this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that.
Tell me about burning the boat story. What?
So I I I'm assuming this is a true story, but I don't know. I just liked it.
Mhm.
When Vikings would invade a land, they
Mhm.
would burn their boats.
Mhm.
So it's either conquer or die. Like
Right.
there's no aspect of retreating back.
Mhm.
And that's how I look. I eventually, that's how I looked at it. I was like, I got to burn the boat because I kept being half in, half out. Like I
Right.
would work for somebody or kind of make up money. I don't know if I can make a living
And
at
that's
this.
tough being an entrepreneur, trying to make that jump,
It's
right?
impossible. That's the I shouldn't say it's impossible because I did it. It is one of the toughest things as an entrepreneur is
Mhm.
stockpiling enough capital to get you to a point to where I can survive off of this capital. I could eat off of that fat
Right.
while building this thing up is
Right.
very, very difficult thing to do. It's
Mhm.
tough, especially if you're not at a point where this is generating enough revenue. Like, say it's covering 50% of your expenses, that still leaves you homeless.
Right.
So it's a very tough decision for anybody to decide when that is.
Right.
But I have come across a lot of photographers, entrepreneurs in general, a lot of videographers in Vegas for some reason.
Mhm.
They always seem to have like 1 foot in and 1 foot still on whatever side hustle or whatever they're doing.
Mhm.
So they're treating their primary objective as a side hustle. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I've been there. It doesn't work. It fails every time.
What do you think is the key, the transition that needs to happen there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, it was discipline.
Okay.
It was getting up at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So when I decided to do that, one, it was tough because I prior to that, I would stay up till 4 a.m. That was more like a night person.
Right.
So getting up at 4, I was like, bro, like just put
Yeah.
your feet on the ground was like how I started. Just get your feet on the ground.
Yeah.
And then eventually it took a couple months. And then so it was the discipline, but the decision itself uh, was one, the passing of my mom.
Mhm.
Like, this life is short. What do I want it to mean for me? What do I
Yeah.
want to do, or how do I want to contribute? That was one thing. Um, that I had to decide, like, what do I like to do? What do I love to do?
Right.
Okay, I'm good at this. So it
Mhm.
was a combination of both. And then the second part was, how do I feed myself? How do I food, water, shelter, basically? How do I do
Mhm.
that?
Mhm.
And then I kind of had a general idea because I
Mhm.
ran an advertising agency. So I was like, I know how to advertise for it and market it.
Mhm.
How do you get the clients? And advertising is like, it's like fishing with feeders. You're putting all these things out, but you don't know if you're ever going to get
Yeah.
people to buy, right?
Right.
And so you kind of like, I hope this works. And then
Yeah.
you just do it.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing was the absolute decision. If this doesn't work, there is no alternative. So
Right.
it motivates you to make it work
So you got to put in 110%
all the
on
time.
making this work.
Right. And that was once I made that mental decision,
Yeah.
then my physical actions aligned with that mental choice.
Yeah.
And that was really the only thing. Because prior to that, I had done it like 2 or 3 times, but I was still always maybe, maybe
Right.
not, halfway. And then when that happened, it was just, this is it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no going back.
No, it's this or I'm
Yeah.
in the park, I guess. I don't know. I don't know where
Yeah.
I'd end up, but
Yeah.
I was like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it get easier as an entrepreneur and a photographer? Like, yeah, I did this. I can relax a little bit. Or does you just have to keep on going and going and
Sure.
going?
That's a great question. You as a photographer, and I would say this as any artist, anybody in any kind of art field,
Mm-hmm.
you do have to reinvent.
Right.
So in photography, well, my buddy has a awesome saying. He says, like, the key to business is find customer, get paid. And
Right.
that's it, right?
Right.
But there's like 10,000 steps to finding the customer.
Of course.
So you do have to modernize, or like I was around in the film era, then it switched to digital. So I had to make like this business kind of collapsed and I had to rebuild it from there.
Right.
Right. And then this move from LA County to Vegas, had to rebuild it again.
Right.
Each time I rebuilt it, I was doing it like the first time I was flat. The second time I was already 10 steps up because I
Right.
knew from the past failure and successes, like this worked. But I would say every 3 to 5 years, you got to you got to adjust to the market itself. And you might even have to adjust your prices or the competition.
Yeah.
So when I first started getting into like corporate events, what I found, it was a very represented market in Vegas because there's all these massive companies, you know, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, I've all had as clients. Always coming to Vegas. So,
Yeah.
and at the time there wasn't very much competition. So that's where I was like, hey, I'm going to go at this market.
Yeah.
Now I have a lot more competition. So I have to reinvent. Like, how do I outcompete the people that have come in after me into this
Right.
market? Yeah.
Right.
So I don't think it goes away, but it does get easier. You get to a base level. If you're smart with your money, you know, you're not trying to keep up with the Joneses or whatever. You keep your expenses low. It like I could work 5 days in a month and literally take 3 weeks and do what I want.
Yeah.
Typically, I'm still up at 4. I'm still working on the business.
Right.
I'm still promoting it in some regard, making phone calls, shaking hands, kissing babies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I still do that.
Yeah.
And I still work 7 days a week. Like,
Right.
I'll work 28 out of 31 days in a month.
Yeah.
I'll go out on dates or whatever, but even those days, I still am working, still putting in hours.
And you're working for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so much. Once you get to a certain financial point, you're like, bro, I should have did this when I was 16.
Yeah.
I don't know why I waited so long. But it is, I don't know if it's scary. I guess it's scary because of social norms. Like, if you're homeless, everybody's like, oh, bro, that guy's homeless. But so what, man? You're fine. You're alive. You're healthy. And that's kind of all you really have, right? Your health. Money you can't take with you.
Yeah.
There was another, I'm big with like quotes, I guess. So Westmoreland was the general during the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. And he had all of his officers write obituaries. And then once they resigned their fate to, hey, we're going to die one day, it's just, how do you want to go out?
Right.
And so I was like, that's good advice. Like, what do I want this life to be? What I want, or what I think other people, not necessarily other people would want, but look down on. If I do something, am I going to be shunned for it? Or if I, you know, and eventually you're just like, I don't really care about any of that stuff. This is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And go for it.
Yeah. It's kind of like, what would people say at your funeral? Like,
Right.
Christian was a good guy. He's a great photographer, talented.
Right.
That's awesome. Do you think as an entrepreneur, like, there's a checklist? You're like, you know, I gotta take care of my mind, gotta take care of my emotional sense, I have to take care of my body.
That's a great question. I think the mental stems from the physical. So working out is super important. And doing things that are difficult, physically difficult, because if you can do things that are physically difficult, the mental difficulty is not so bad.
Yes.
Like, if your legs are on fire because you've been running all day, or you do like a Tough Mudder or Spartan race, and you're like, bro, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then you're back at the office and you got a client complaining about some photos. You're like, whatever. Okay, let's get this fixed. And we'll move on. It's not as stressful. So I would say the physical aspect, exercise, at minimum 3 days a week, but I do 6.
Yeah.
Do that. And then the discipline, I'm now a morning person because I set this track for myself, but whatever it is, just stick to that. So if you're going to work from 4 to 8, whatever it is, or say you start at 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., just do that every day. The big advantage I had of getting up at 4 was I had this 4-hour block between 4 and 8 with no interruption every day. So this is almost 28 hours a week.
Right.
Of I can I can brainstorm, I can develop new strategies, I can say, hey, these are the projects I want to work on, this is the equipment I need. I had this time to myself to
Mhm.
figure out the direction and path I wanted to go,
Mhm.
and what are the things I have to take care of today.
Right.
And then at 8 o'clock is when the phone starts ringing, and you got to be responsive to emails. And if you have a staff, you got to, hey, this is what I need you to do. That's where the day kind of gets away from you because it's not yours anymore.
Right.
So finding that isolation time,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and it could be 2 hours a day, whatever it is. For me, it was beneficial that 4 hour period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
And then I kept this thing in the back of my head. I was like, by noon, I've already worked your 8 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So from 12 to 5, I got extra hours on you. So it was out competing most of people that just don't have that type of discipline.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So the physical, that isolation time,
Mm-hmm.
and then overcoming the fear of whatever your worst fear is. For me, it was like, I don't want to be homeless, but I just was like, F it. If it is what it is, and I'm just
Right.
going to do it.
Right.
But I would say those three
Well,
things.
you're going back to the burning the boat thing,
Yeah.
which I love. I love that.
Yeah. There's no way back. And when you don't have a way back, you're like, okay, I better concentrate on what's forward then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anybody that inspires you that is your mentor and you're like, I want to be like that guy?
I've had Richard Avedon was one of my, like, I would look at his work. I'm like, bro, I want to do that. In my early 20s, he was a big time like fashion photographer.
Yeah.
And there was another guy that's more unknown, Marco Glaviano.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how this guy's unknown because he was like, they would fly him all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like Cindy Crawford when she was like 18. He was the guy that was shooting her that famous beach photo shoot. That's his work. Those two guys kind of inspired me. And then locally, Kelly Garney, I was like, he kind of showed me, hey, there's a way I could make a business out of this.
Mm-hmm.
But the mentors I had, like one of my jobs when I was going to college was, they called him a pre-press technician.
Mm-hmm.
So it's computer work. So big offset printers, like these things are like the size of semi trucks. They're massive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that digital file has to come in and you make these plates, but you have to interpret the digital file basically to make these metal plates. That was my job, was to process this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that owned that company, Jim Denyon was his name.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me a lot of business advice, like don't buy a piece of equipment until it costs you money not to have it.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, he was good on giving me like, and he would include me on like the meetings he would have with reps trying to sell him stuff, or the company meetings. Like he really kind of took me under his wing.
Yeah.
And then I had another, I forget his name though. He was the CFO of a company called Wesco.
Okay.
And these guys were like, it's going to drive me nuts. I don't remember his name. But these guys were massive real estate developers in California.
Mm-hmm.
And like the owner of the company was like Iron Man. Like he lived in Malibu and he had the bluff and just crazy amounts of money. And they had like 7 companies. But he had me in a lot of meetings and kind of let me participate because I did their marketing and advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And he just let me participate in seeing what's behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like in my late 20s. So having that kind of access to these are $100 million deals because they're doing massive infrastructure or whatever. Seeing these meetings with like bonding companies and insurance companies was very informative. And the tactics that he would use, like they had this long table, boardroom table, like typically what you see in the movies, right?
Right.
And when this CFO took over, this company, Wesco, was a parent company for 7 different companies, from construction to real estate development. So they'd buy land, build properties, manage properties. So anything related to development.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to get these bonding companies. And bonding is like guaranteed insurance. Mm-hmm. So they're expensive. But when he took over, he was the CFO, and each division had its own CEO. Mm-hmm. So 7 CEOs. That guy came in and hired young, hot assistants for each one of those CEOs. And in my mind, I was like, man, it's kind of sexist.
Yeah.
But he's like, I asked him one day, I was like, why did you do that? And he goes, come to the bonding meeting and sit at the end of the table and just don't say a word. Just keep your mouth shut and watch what happens. So he's sitting at the other end. You got these two, like, these guys had to be 70, 80-year-old guys that are funding the bond.
Mm-hmm.
And then across from them, he had this young admin assistant taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
And her boobs were pushed up and she was wearing like a nice mini skirt.
Mm-hmm.
And these two old guys could not concentrate during that whole negotiation. They just kept looking at this girl. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
he's using it as a negotiating tactic.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were lost. I was like, bro, he's running circles around these
That
guys.
is awesome.
That's, yeah. So things like that, human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. He showed me a lot of that. And he was very good at moving parts and people
Yeah.
to get a task done. He told me too with sales reps, he goes, eliminate, if a sales rep says, hey, we're not able to sell this thing because this is what's going on, he would say, okay. And then he would get that fixed. And he goes, just eliminate their excuses
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll sell. Or you got
Yeah.
to fire them because all it is excuses.
Right.
But eliminate their excuses so they don't have any excuses not to sell.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's pretty brilliant.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need to coach them at that level, but
Yeah.
if they're having if they have an excuse,
Take care of the issue.
just eliminate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool because what I'm seeing throughout your whole career is little by little you're being handed tools
Mhm.
throughout your history. I mean, negotiation,
Mhm.
discipline,
Mhm.
being mentored and so forth.
Yeah, I got lucky.
Yeah, we talked
Yeah.
a little bit about marketing,
Mhm.
and I kind of want to dive in with this being my marketing.
Sure.
But you talked about a halo.
Yeah.
Tell me
halo
more
of
about
credibility.
that. Yeah.
So, like with social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
If say you look at somebody's Instagram page and they have 200 followers, or you look at a person A has 200, you look at person B and they have 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's credibility.
Mm-hmm.
The halo aspect is okay, and just say social media by itself. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
If all of those accounts have a large following, then that person must be credible because all of these different people
Mm-hmm.
want them. And then you take that and you plug that into Google reviews. So like my business, I want more Google reviews.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, I forget what they call it on LinkedIn, but basically connections is what they
Right.
call it on. So more connections on LinkedIn.
Right.
Doing podcasts,
Mhm.
anything you can outside of your own business, like these secondary items that say, hey, this must be a credible person because look at their halo of credibility.
Right.
Yeah. That
So
was
if you just had a website, you'd be like, this guy has nothing.
yeah, it's just a website.
Yeah.
Or say he has something, but he's competing against somebody like me that
Mhm.
has everything else.
Right.
It's a little bit easier for me to sell, or somebody that, because a lot of clients, I've never even talked to them on the phone. It's all, hey, we have this project, send me a proposal, and then they're going to do research. It's 15 grand on a project or whatever the price is.
Yeah.
They're going to research that person, right?
So social media is important in this aspect then.
It is in
Yeah.
that aspect. For
Okay.
me, when I come across social media, like when somebody hits me up on Instagram for a photo shoot,
Mhm.
typically it's beer budget with champagne dreams. They just
Right.
don't have the real budget for it, right?
Yeah.
But getting the audiences built up, it creates this credibility like, oh, this guy must know what they're talking about or
Right.
must know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It's like
awesome.
social proof, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You walk into a room and everybody wants to talk to this one person. You're like, that person must know what they're doing, or
Right.
they must be credible or something,
Right.
right? That's
Definitely.
kind of that. For a business, we just titled it a halo of credibility.
Right.
It was my advertising sales pitch.
I love that. I love that. Definitely coined that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It worked.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're going to build you a halo credibility.
Yeah.
It's only going to cost you 30 grand a year.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
But it
Good,
worked
good.
out pretty good.
Yeah. And you would say like relationships, bouncing off of that,
Mhm.
talking about the halo, social media, relationships are a big thing too.
I think relationships are important.
Yeah.
I would say as an entrepreneur, I'm going
Mhm.
to kind of bounce a little bit.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, I would say it's better to have personal relationships
Mhm.
So if you're married, you better have a good spouse. If you're not married, you better have good friends or
Right.
family members, because it's stressful. And most of the people that don't do their own thing
Mhm.
don't understand what it's like when you set your own schedule. Like, everybody looks at it from the outside and they're like, oh, you get to sleep in and you get to party and do whatever you want. And
Yeah,
you're like,
no.
bro, I'm working 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
They just don't, it doesn't cross over very well.
Yeah.
But if you have this strong network, that they don't really care what you do as long as you're happy and not a
Mhm.
burden to them, right? Like,
Right.
there's that saying of a man that burdensome to his friends finds out he has no friends, right?
Yeah.
But I would say that's more important.
Mhm.
As a photographer, I'm kind of in a niche where I do get repeat clients, but
Mhm.
typically most photographers, it's find client, get paid, find new client, get paid, find new client, get paid.
Mhm.
Like a wedding photographer,
Yeah.
you're only going to shoot their wedding one time, and
Yeah.
then you got to find another wedding, right?
Yeah.
So my field is slightly different, where I can get repeat customers like once a year. This client's going to
Mhm.
come back every year at the same time.
Mhm.
But for the most part, there's not a whole lot of networking that you can do that is going to, like, it's not like sales or I don't know. I don't even know a relative industry that I can compare it to,
Mhm.
because it is find customer, get paid.
Right.
So this strong relationship you have
Mhm.
isn't as important, I would say, as your personal relationships, because
Right.
you're going to go through trials and tribulations, and you're going to have to lean on people you know
Right.
when you're like, hey man, I'm kind of hurting right now, I got to talk to you. Or you don't even have to say that, like, bro, let's go-kart racing, I just got to
Yeah,
get my
yeah, yeah.
mind off of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
That's more important, I would say.
And I think, it's funny that you bring that up because, being friends and having those relationships with other entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
they're going to understand you more.
Yeah.
They're definitely going to understand you more. You can sit down and talk if you're having a challenge or having some difficulty with somebody else's business.
Yep.
I myself, as an entrepreneur, I'm constantly talking to my entrepreneur friends like, hey, what is your experience over the holiday? Or,
Mhm.
I'm having this issue with employees. Like, what would be your take on it?
uh
So,
oh,
with,
yeah, other
yeah,
entrepreneurs, I find that does help. But
yeah,
I think it's like, I would call those friends more like colleagues,
okay,
right?
yeah,
So I'm bouncing these ideas. Um, One thing I tend to find when talking to other entrepreneurs
uh-huh,
is it always somehow comes back around to, like, let's start a business and make some money.
yeah,
So there's not really like, and it could be just my anecdotal life,
mm-hmm,
but like the friends I have, I grew up with,
yeah,
like I've known them since I was 5,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
when I went to military school, you're kind of a band of brothers.
yeah.
So, like, I go snowboarding with them. We don't talk anything about business, or we
Yeah,
go
which
deer
is
hunt.
nice too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is true. I do like networking and talking to other people that own businesses.
Mhm.
It is beneficial.
Yeah.
But I would say with that, one thing that everybody has in common with that
Mhm.
is I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs could do 9 to 5 for the long term. Like, they're just like, bro, I can't do it. Now
Yeah.
they could do it. Most of the successful ones, they'll do it for a year or 3, because they're like, hey man, I got to feed my family, or I got to pay my
Yeah.
bills, or whatever. But they're kind of like, I'm not sitting in this cubicle for 20
No.
years. I'm not doing
No.
it.
And that's what's weird about being an entrepreneur. There's this gene inside you that
Yeah.
needs to be like, there's something bigger and better that I'm worth.
Yeah. I just, yeah, that's how I was. I couldn't sit in the same room
No.
every day,
I'd kill
40 hours.
myself. No offense, but I'd kill myself.
It would be brutal. I've done it and I
Yeah.
can do it. It's just not, I'm like, I'm not meant to do this,
Yeah.
and
There's a big differentiation between entrepreneur and the people who just clock in and out, which is fine,
yeah,
you
nothing's
know.
wrong with either path.
Right.
Nothing at all. It's just, I think the entrepreneur just can't do that.
Yeah.
So they have to figure something else out.
Yeah.
Is where I think a lot of entrepreneur comes from.
Yeah.
And then guys, they're like, if I make a lot of money, I can get a lot of girls. There's that aspect of
Yeah.
it too. But I think those guys don't stick around too long. If you're doing it, you got to do it for yourself.
Mhm.
And then the success is a byproduct of doing something that you want to do.
Mhm.
And if you can figure out you're going to do something that can contribute back to society,
Mhm.
then success and for men, it's probably girls, is a byproduct of you doing what you want to do.
So you would say it would be a passion then?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the only thing I'm like, I could do this forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking through my lens is like my happy time. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, let's do that. Let's do some more.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Capturing moments. Yeah.
Yeah. I make a living off of my right eye.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome. So as an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
we went through a lot of cool lessons, quotes that you shared, stories. If I'm young and I want to be a photographer or want to be an entrepreneur, what would be like some lessons that you would give me?
If you're young, say you're starting it, and you don't necessarily even have to be young, but if you're starting out, but it's better if you're younger because this takes time.
Yeah.
Especially now, it's flooded because the barrier to entry to be a photographer is so low.
Right.
And the technical skills that you have to have now are so automated.
Mhm.
Like you can buy a new camera and just set it to auto and it'll take good photos.
Yeah.
Learn it though, understand the craft, understand shutter speed, understand ISO, and understand f-stop. Like if you don't understand those, I don't know. I can't help you with that. So start with that. Get educated on that. Take 1 million photos. Like I broke 1 million photographs in my career 5 years ago.
That's
so
wild.
literally do that. The more it's like playing basketball, shooting free throws. If you shoot 100 a day or if you shoot 1,000 a day, the guy that shoots 1,000 is going to make more.
Yeah.
This works the same way. You
Yeah.
got to take photos, take photos, take photos, take photos. Take your camera everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Do street photography everywhere you go. Just always shoot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to college at this point. I would say to be honest, I think it's a waste of money to get a degree because there's very few companies that are like, hey, we want to hire a photographer. It's all freelance, really.
Right.
So unless you're going to go into like work in broadcasting, then I would say it's viable. If you do go to college, go to like USC, go somewhere where they have a program, a long-standing program, because they have a job placement network after you get out of college where they can be like, hey, you can go work, for the studios in Hollywood, or they have a avenue for career success.
Right.
I would recommend that if you're going to go to school. But if it was me starting out now, I would buy the best camera body that I could buy. Like if an R5 would be fine, or that's a Canon or A7. And I would buy a 50 millimeter lens, and I could do everything that 80% of photographers do with those two pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
And if I was young, I'd be like, hey girl, let's go shoot, because you're in that environment. That is one benefit of going to college. You're around a lot of young, pretty females, and you're like, hey, I need a model. Will you model for me? And they're a little more, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And they're all looking for Instagram posts and all that stuff. Anyways, I would start with that because it's easy to do. It'll take you probably 100 models before you can start coaching the model, because the real trick is you take the photo and then you pull it up later on the screen and you're like, this is what I was thinking it would look like, but this is how it actually looks.
Yeah.
Now, how do I think from the end? How do I think of an idea and then get somebody to create the idea?
Right.
That's where it's tough. That's where the pro comes in.
Yeah.
So somebody has an idea, they tell me the idea.
Knowing
I'm like,
the look.
yeah, I already know what it's going to look like before I click the shutter.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then understand the business. SEO, like you better get good at website development. There's no way around that. Either you're going to pay somebody to do it, which is an ongoing expense, or you learn how to do it.
Right.
In today's world, there's no way around it.
Right.
You can come up now on social media. It's a little tougher. In my opinion, I think you're better off trying to build an audience and monetizing the audience than you are trying to find clients from social media.
Right.
So if you're going to go that route, you got to concentrate on teaching or shooting something that's super interesting.
Right.
That people just want to watch you do it.
Right.
That would be the way I would do it. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of moving in that direction now.
Yeah.
So social media is great, but the CPM is low. You have to have 100,000 subscribers to really start to make money at it, which is very difficult to do.
Right.
You can make good side money to a degree, but you know, to make 100 grand on social media is tough.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's highly competitive. Like
Yeah.
you're not just competing against locals, you're competing against all the photographers on the internet.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's a tough market.
Yeah.
It's
Awesome.
possible though.
Yeah.
Just burn the boat, I guess, and go for
Burn
it.
the boat, man. Burn the boat. That's
See what
awesome. I'm
happens.
definitely gonna steal that from you. I like
Yeah,
that one a
please
lot.
do. Please. It's not mine. I stole
Yeah.
it from somebody else. So go ahead
Yeah.
and take it.
Good.
It was a good. I like that when I came across that. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
it's time to burn the boat.
Put things in perspective.
Yeah.
Cool.
And what else are we gonna do, man?
Yeah, definitely. Got to move forward. Got to move forward.
Yeah.
Well, good, man. Well, thank you so much. It was
My
definitely
pleasure.
a pleasure. Christian, where, if I was listening to this podcast, where would I find you at?
Just Google my name, Christian Purdie, Purdie. I'm very easy to find.
And
If you're out of Las Vegas, just Christian Purdie, Las Vegas. Christian Purdie Photography is the name of the business.
awesome.
Yeah. I
Awesome.
made it super easy to find.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.